Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a topic that is just surrounded by myths: UFC fighter pay. Now, you'd think landing a UFC contract is your golden ticket, right? But we're about to show you the real numbers behind a life in the Octagon, all based on the first-hand account of UFC fighter Johnny Walker.
You know the scene. A fighter gets their hand raised, they're holding one of those giant checks. It's so easy to think they're all just instant millionaires. That's the picture we all have in our heads, that a UFC contract is basically like hitting the lottery.
Well, according to Johnny Walker, that idea is, you guessed it, a total myth. The reality, especially for the fighters who are just breaking in, is a completely different world from those massive paydays. So let's get into the nitty-gritty.
To really get this, we've got to start right at the beginning, a fighter's very first contract. This is where the gap between what we think we know and what's actually happening gets huge. So Johnny Walker's first deal in the UFC was for $10,000 just to show up and fight. Then he had a potential bonus of another $10,000 if he won. In the biz, they call that a 10-in-10 deal. And look, it sounds pretty decent, but that's just the number on paper.
So what actually happens to that money, especially if you lose the fight? This is where that dream of a huge payday collides with some pretty harsh financial realities.
All right, let's use a loss as an example. You start with that $10,000 show purse. You see that number, but let me tell you, you're not taking that home. It's not even close.
First thing that happens, deductions. Since Johnny Walker isn't a U.S. resident, fighting in the States meant an immediate 30% tax hit right off the top. Then you've got 10 to 15% for your management and another 10% for your coaches. And just like that, poof, about half of that purse is gone before you even touch it.
But wait, there's more. Next up are the costs you pay out of your own pocket, for the training camp that got you ready for the fight in the first place. We're talking nutrition, recovery sessions, medicals, extra flights for your team. These are things you absolutely have to pay for to compete at that level.
So after all is said and done, after the taxes, the fees, and paying for your own camp, that initial $10,000 purse shrinks all the way down to a final take-home pay of just $400. Yeah, $400 for a professional fight in the biggest MMA promotion on the planet.
Okay, so if the start is that brutal, you've got to be asking, how does anybody make a living doing this? Well, the path to making real money starts with what you do inside that cage. Performance is absolutely everything.
You really have to think of it like climbing a ladder. You win fights, you get your win money, and you might get a performance bonus. You keep winning, you get ranked, and that leads to much better contracts. The big prize? Headlining a main event. That's where the pay really jumps up. And here's some good news on that front. The UFC is starting to sweeten the pot for exciting fights. The performance of the night bonus just doubled from $50K to $100,000. Plus, there's a new guarantee. If you finish your fight with a knockout or submission, you're guaranteed an extra $25,000. Not bad.
But here's the thing. Winning fights is only half the battle. To really truly make it financially, a fighter has to master the game outside the cage too. This isn't just a sport anymore. It's a business.
The whole philosophy of the UFC, and this comes straight from Dana White, is that fighters eat what they kill. It's a pretty raw way of putting it, but the equation is simple. The more people you get to watch, the more tickets you sell, the more money you make. Your value is tied directly to how popular you are.
So here's the bottom line. You have to be an entertainer. The fans and the promotion, they don't just want you to win. They want knockouts, they want submissions, they want excitement. A boring fighter, even one who wins all the time, just isn't going to make the big bucks in today's UFC.
This means fighters need a whole different playbook that goes way beyond just what they do in the gym. It's about building up personal brand. You got to grow your social media, you have to connect with fans all over the world, be great on the mic, and this is a big one, you have to lock down other ways to make money, like sponsorships.
And this is why that stuff matters so much. Johnny Walker tells this story about going more than a year without a single fight. In that time, he moved to a new country and bought a house. His fight purse didn't pay for any of that. His sponsorships did. Having a strong brand gives you a safety net that fight checks just can't.
So, we've broken down the contracts, the crazy deductions, and the strategies you need to actually succeed. What's the one big lesson we can pull from all this?
It all boils down to this one question. In the UFC today, being a great athlete is not enough. The fighters who make that life-changing money are the ones who get it. They understand they aren't just an employee, they're an entire business.